I don't know how to transition. Now I'm in a weird energy.
What are we talking about tonight?
We're talking about. Let me go take a fucking hit really fucking quick.
Yeah.
And then I'll come in with a fresh spirit, a fresh mind, fresh attitude, and a fresh lease on life.
Yeah, buddy.
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Cue intro music.
Yeah, man.
All right. So I made myself some fish tacos earlier today, and it got me thinking on the origins of life. And where did we all come from? Danny, are you a creationist by any chance?
Wait, so is a creationist somebody who believes in evolution, or creationist is someone who believes in a god, a creator?
Creationists are like that Ken guy, that Australian dude with the fucking museum that we talked about.
Oh, the Noah's Ark?
Yeah, Noah's Ark, dude.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm not a creationist.
So you were brought up Catholic. I was brought up Christian. So I'm assuming you were taught the story of Genesis, of God created the world in 7 days, created all the fucking mammals, all the land animals, created all the life in the sea.
Mm-hmm.
When did you stop becoming a quote unquote creationist? Like, when did you finally go like, this is fucking stupid?
I don't know if I was ever a creationist because feel like I was also learning about, evolution and stuff like that as I was also developing, or being in the Catholic faith. So I don't know if I was ever a creationist. I don't know if I ever believed in Genesis. I thought it was fucking weird.
Even when you were a little kid, like
I mean,
before you were in school.
I'm sure when I was so like one of the only strong like religious memories I have, and it's a funny one. Like besides the whole like existential dread kind of stuff was like how the Catholic priest.
Hold on, that was a really funny note right there. The only religious memory I have, except for the existential dread, is
Yeah.
minus that whole traumatic experience of all of that extra. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Right. What is existence? I remember being terrified of God because he was like, I remember the Catholic priests, probably also my mom, being like, well, God can hear everything you say and everything you do. And so I always felt like my mind was a safe space. And then I started to like, there's a period of time where like, if I were to say something fucked up, I'd be like, oh, God damn it, God just heard me. And so like, it was this weird psychological like attack on my moral building. And so I like got really like, I think I was stressed out. Like if I saw someone fat and in my head, I'd be like, oh man, that person's really fat. And then with like my like 5-year-old brain, it was like, oh dude, that was bad. That was mean, which is bad, which God doesn't like. So that might bring you might go to like the bad place or whatever, like that kind of like child, like you just like, you're so fucked. You're just like, you're basically told, here are the rules, now follow it.
Yeah. Basically what you got was, here's your entree of existential crisis and your side of anxiety. Here you go. Welcome to the Catholic religion.
Exactly.
Be scared of God at all times. I feel like that's kind of one of the fundamental issues with the Catholic Church, of like the whole fear of the wrath of God. Like God in its purity, in its purest form, is supposed to be a symbol of love and acceptance. And
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's how I sort of interpret the notion of a God or
It's
a higher being in the universe.
It's pretty funny because it's like it's a great like hook, line, and sinker, because it's like hey, this thing that created us, he's like a pretty fucking crazy vengeful dude. Like, don't get on his bad side. Oh, you want to know how to not get on his bad side? You got to embrace his son, and you got to like embody the son.
The son, Who he also forced to be
And then they
murdered
and
on
then
a
they
cross.
proclaim to say that the son, oh, he can turn water into wine and he can walk on water, and he's just like, all around, like he's just like the Messiah. So it's like,
Christ would
so
crush it.
you got to live up to that. It's weird.
Christ would crush it at parties, walking across the pool, turning the whole pool into.
Could you imagine him getting drunk?
Wine.
Could you imagine him getting drunk and keep changing people's drinks? So like, it's like they have like a rum and coke, and he like zaps it, and it's like red wine, and they're like, "What the fuck?"
And you're off the wagon, and you're off the wagon, and you're off the wagon. He just shows up at an Alcoholic Anonymous class and just turns all the
live it
coffee.
to suffer. Yeah.
That's good. That'd be a fun God, a little sort of prankster, low-key-ish kind of God.
Yeah.
So I kind of asked that question because I was sort of thinking about myself, and like I remember when I was a young kid, I was petting my dog, and was like, when you pet a dog, you feel their bones, and I started just noticing all of these like consistencies of like, oh, that bone is the same as like this bone on me. Oh, and he's got 2 bones down here. Like I just started noticing like everything that anatomically is kind of the same, just in a different slight orientation.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like being a young kid and just realizing like, I don't know, like this, we're essentially the same. We're a tweaked version of the same base structure. Like,
mm-hmm.
And that goes.
I mean, like what happens when like a kid sees a monkey in like a kid's book, and they're like, what's that? And like, oh, that's a monkey, and that's a close ancestor of ours. And
right.
So like now that science isn't
it gives a new meaning to the idea Curious George. You read your kid Curious George, and now they're curious about George.
Apparently nobody can be curious about George anymore.
Wait, really? Did George get canceled?
Possibly.
I don't know. Did something happen to Curious George?
I'm pretty sure it just was catching flack for being super outdated.
Oh well, yeah. It came out
30 years ago. Didn't age well. It was one of those. Yeah.
I'm assuming some racist things with having a monkey.
Dude, I'm sure.
We'll cut this out. We'll
cut this I'm out. Sure. Yeah.
But that's when I guess I first sort of thought that like, oh, this is so obvious. Now that I've heard the story of, my parents weren't like fundamentalists, like creationist Christians or anything. It was like much more of that fucking like lighthearted Christianity. So I was like taught pretty early on like the idea of evolution, I guess, or natural selection. And it just made, in that moment of petting my dog and realizing that we have all the same bone structures and like everything is essentially the same, just slightly modified. That's when I was like, how does anybody fucking dispute this? And it blows my mind that there are people who are allowed to vote, drive a car, and procreate and have children within this country that believe truly in creationism and believe literally that the book of Genesis is like word for word. Blows my mind.
I mean, I understand their fundamental, like that they get their fundamental rights, but as far as their reasoning goes, like they're absolutely just so fucking lost, it seems.
This is a controversial statement. There should be some sort of test for being able to vote. Like
So evolution.
Oh, fuck. See, now I'm just like stuck in a loop. Basically, democracy is the least bad government that we found so far.
Yeah.
Far from fucking perfect, especially in our democracy. Okay. Fuck.
So go back to the dogs and the spines.
Back to the dogs and the spines. Let's get back into evolution.
So like from a pretty young age, like you were already questioning the notion of God. By the time I was in middle school, I was just kind of like, yeah, this is kind of bullshit. I mean, even I also just feel like in today's modern society, like when you're learning how to read and you're learning story structure and things like that, by the time you're like, 10 years old, you're reading, you know, hopefully you're reading at least at like a 10-year-old level or whatever. And I feel like you'd be able to kind of have some like logic problem solving. And so when you hear ridiculous stories in the Bible, you're probably like, well, I have a decent sense of what reality is. And all, like, there's no way that shit can just like fucking happen. Right. It's just that blind, devout faith that it kind of blocks people's rationality, like factors sometimes. It's
Yeah,
like their moral standing, like, gets in their way of like rational thinking.
yeah. I mean, the same thing happens with Santa Claus. It's essentially the same exact thing. Is you're told this uh, impossible, or at the very least, very improbable idea of this thing in the sky who lives in the North Pole and flies reindeer around and delivers presents to every kid across the world in one single night. And then eventually, you kind of, once your logical brain forms, you go like, yeah, that sounds like kind of bullshit.
Sounds like a lot of horse shit.
But when I found out
Yeah.
about Santa, I stayed quiet that I knew, because I was still getting presents. I was like, if I just don't say anything, I'm still going to get these presents from Santa Claus. So it's in my benefit.
That's a good thing.
And I think that's maybe what a lot of people are doing with religion. Just like, I know this is bullshit, but if I just go to church and believe, sort of, then I'm going to get this.
But if I'm wrong, it's like that's like a fear-based decision almost. Like, well, just in case I'm like it is true. I guess it's not a fear-based decision. It's just like a cover all your grounds kind of thing.
You're playing your bets.
Yeah.
But I mean, evolution just makes so much sense, especially when you start looking at things like the deep sea trenches and like what are they called? The microbes that are formed via chemosynthesis as opposed to photosynthesis. Like the prevailing theory for so long before we were able to really study like the deep oceans, which is almost like a look back in evolutionary time. You can see these niches that have been there and sort of found a way to survive in like the most remote parts of the world that get zero sunlight. But the prevailing theory for so long was it was the debate on how life initially was created. And now the theory is that it was a chemical synthesis of carbon and basically non-organic materials, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, all under this, very particular, chemically rich environment next to these like deep pits that are putting out sulfur and carbon. And it's essentially like a tube going down to like the center of the earth, not the center, but down into the magma where sort of rocks are created.
Yeah.
So the prevailing theory now is like that, under certain either UV or chemical conditions, organic matter can be created without, essentially organic ingredients.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
And now we
It's
have
like
the science to prove the initial beginning of life potentially on Earth. And then that increases the chances of life developing across the universe, which opens up a whole nother door.
Oh, totally.
But what were you gonna say? Sorry, I cut you off.
I mean, no, you summed that up pretty well. Yeah, it's like for the longest time, like we only really knew of photosynthesis until we were really able to start studying the ocean floor. And it's like besides the deep, like besides space, it's like one of the most hostile environments, I think, to try to survive. Like no light, high pressure, like little nutrients. But it's like life finds a way.
Yeah, I
And
think it's called ocean fall or something like that, or ocean snow or something like
oh, you're
that.
talking about like the sediment that like falls down on the bottom of the floor.
All of the fish shit, all of the
Yeah.
scraps, all of just like the organic material that just like slowly falls all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. that sustains all of these really freaky, creepy, crawly looking fucking essentially aliens, because they live in a
Yeah.
totally different environment from us. Even though they are terrestrial, they're on planet Earth. When you look at like the fucking bioluminescence that some of these creatures have, when you look at like the vampire squid, that's it's a fucking alien, man. Like if we
Oh
found
yeah.
that on Mars, everyone would shit their pants. But because it's just deep down in the ocean, it's like, oh, that fish just
Oh no,
lights up.
I'm sure people still shit their pants.
Maybe
I
some
mean,
do.
some of those like video recordings of like the uh is it the gigantic squid, the colossal squid?
Yeah.
Scary.
Which
Um,
they only found they only confirmed its existence in the 70s. Sorry, dude, it's one of my ticks. It's what it is. When
fair.
I'm thinking, and especially when I'm thinking about squids, this is what I do. I
This
got
is
the
very squid-like.
I got the tentacles going. Um, they only found that in the 70s, and that could be the origin. Like the colossal squid could be the origin of the myth of the kraken from the high seas of yonder.
Oh yeah.
When the pirates be fishing and they get taken down by the kraken. Um, and it was always like this mythical thing, like say the Loch Ness monster or Bigfoot. And then come to 1970s, they actually find out that I think it's called deep sea gigantism, where like these
Gigantism.
creatures
Yeah, yeah.
just grow to like 15, 20 times their normal size, like in higher water. Um, and I think it has to do with surface area and temperature regulation. If you have more surface area, if you're smaller, you have more surface area to body weight ratio,
It's
as
an
opposed to
energy
when you're
conserving
dilating.
like response, right? And then also it's like the oxygen supplies, especially like I think at the poles are like really, really, really fucking high, but all that oxygen's like trapped under the ice. So it just stays in the deep sea. And I think the oxygen levels like really, really increase the size of animals as well.
Yeah. Or even sometimes like the need for oxygen. Like I can't remember the name of the shark, but there's like a deep sea shark that has 7 gills as opposed to like most
Yeah,
sharks have
yeah,
5
exactly.
gills. So
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you're
yeah.
bigger, you're able to have more potential lung capacity or gill capacity. I don't know if
Mhm. Yeah,
that
yeah.
word has ever been said before, gill capacity. I'm thinking of like a white guy on American Ninja Warrior named Gil. Just like, oh,
I'm
look at the
thinking of
gill
Kanye West
capacity
in
on this
South
guy.
Park. Fish sticks? What's your gill capacity? That was not a Kanye West accent.
I think the reference made it. Um, no, but even in like you can watch the evolution of the sophistication of like eyeballs throughout the ocean and throughout like I don't know, throughout the fossil record within the ocean and see it go from just like a lens that can basically just detect light or dark, just A or B, and detect a
Mhm.
shadow over them, which might be a predator. And then you see it sort of like slowly form into this, like, you know, I mean, that's a common thing that like creationists tote as an argument of how could this have just been created naturally out of nothing. Like the eyeball is so complex, and the way that it flips the shape upside down, your brain has to flip it within itself in the ocular um, hemisphere, I guess hemisphere. It's not something like that, fucking whatever. um, the eyeball is so complex, and the other like sort of theory like that is like if you found a watch on a beach, it's so complicated that it couldn't have just come from nature, that it has to have come from a creator. Somebody has to have made it. And that's a lot of the argument that people, the base of the argument that people use for like the eyeball and how complex it is. And therefore it has to have had like a supreme maker. But like you can see, not even through the fossil record, you can see through creatures that are alive today the evolution of the eyeball. going through the spectrum of being just like light dark, and then having a little bit more focus, and then becoming a highly tuned focus machine like we have, and then farther than us, like the golden eagle and the bald eagle have, they can see a fucking a rabbit from 2 miles away up in the sky.
Right. And the creationist justification is like, well, God like fated the eagle to fly, so then it gave it really good vision. Right. But it's, so it kind of just takes away like the circumstantialness, like, or it just like all of the like circumstances that like where things evolve into finding the means they need to survive. Like it just puts that into, well, that God placed everything there for a reason.
Yeah, totally. And that it can seem like the whole structure of natural selection is so complex that it would have to be placed there. But I'm also remembering a quote by somebody, or basically the idea is the natural laws of physics and the way the universe is structured is only structured that way because we can only see it that way because of the way it is, I guess. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't have happened any other way. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here to be able to observe it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of the same idea with like nature fine tunes things so well. And that's what's so fascinating about the ocean is literally nothing goes to waste. It's had so many billions of years to evolve to just become this perfect until humans came through and fucked it up with oil and fucking plastic, fucking heaps of fucking trash floating through the ocean. It was a perfect symbiotic system of nothing goes to waste, everything gets taken care or gets taken advantage of.
I mean, even the inorganic material.
Yeah.
And that stuff's broken down and is, at the beginning, the starting point of life. And that process has like been continuing.
Yeah. I mean, like rocks are crucial for just forming coral beds, and anemones latch themselves onto it, and then clams latch themselves onto it, and then all these filter feeders excrete some sort of waste, and then all of these scavengers kind of come up and they start taking their little bits and pieces, and those scavengers get eaten by a fucking shark later on. It's a fascinating view into like the true circle of life.
Mm-hmm.
Which we don't really, I don't know, I guess we don't really see that much on the land anymore because humans have just kind of like, spread themselves out so much, but also condensed themselves within, big cities like fucking New York, or just condense themselves into little pockets of populations.
Mm-hmm.
And we're somewhat removed, I guess, from the natural world. And we don't see like, we have characters like Yogi Bear and like the Coca-Cola polar bears and shit. And people think like, oh, bears are cuddly. Or like the videos that you see of people in like Yellowstone and their kid they're like, hey, little Jimmy, go take a picture in front of the buffalo. And then the buffalo doesn't fucking like it. And he fucking dips down and sends little Jimmy into fucking oblivion. Because people are like,
by setting up civilization and society, we've interrupted the oh my gosh, I'm having a blank out right now. Natural selection. Jesus, we blocked out so much of the natural selection process in our species.
We've eliminated evolution within human beings, at least in America. Or like
some would say would some say that would be a devolving thing that we're doing?
I mean, if you watch the movie Idiocracy, then yeah. But I think at least we've gone like stagnant. Like I don't know. We don't have evolution happens under environmental pressures. When you have a pressure and you have a need to survive, that's when adaptation and evolution kicks in and natural selection kicks in. because the weak will die off because there's this pressure, like a new predator moves in, or environmental changes happen. And the Sahara used to be 6,000 years ago a fertile rainforest, and then all of a sudden now you're in a desert. You either adapt and survive or you don't, and that only comes from sort of environmental pressures. And for the most part in the Western world, we don't have those environmental pressures in that way. We have more like social pressures, economic pressures, but we don't have as much survival pressures where we have to literally adapt our genes.
Yeah.
But we might be having to adapt our genes to interfacing with technology and being able to hop on the iPad. And you see that with little kids. Basically, AI is coming. Elon Musk has warned us for so long. The robots are going to, that might be just the next stage of evolution. We've said this quote before. Humans are the sex organs of the machine world.
Mm-hmm.
AI might just be that next thing, and like we're the grasshopper, and guess what? The cicadas are coming. We're all about to turn into a bunch of cicadas. I think this call is about to run out, and that seems like a good editing point to stop.
Oh yeah, good call. Good call.
Let me send
That
you
was a
another
good one, man. That was good. That was a good little tangent.
Dude.
Boom.
When you do it, you fucking do it. I'm just gonna leave all this in too. Notice that I haven't done Alex Jones or Donald Trump in a long time.
Yeah, that's all right.
How do I feel about that?
I think it had its course. We'll come back.
It'll come back. It just has to be the right moment. But I just noticed.
Yeah.
I was like thinking about that the other day. I was like, I haven't done that in a while. So who knows? So and AI is taking.
So anyways, yeah. Hold on, Alex. All right, no, I'm not throwing the ball back. That's not a throw. Okay.
Organically.
Ooh,
Although I might
okay.
leave that in because I was semi-organic, but also somewhat set up. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
And have you seen this show called Raised by Wolves?
No.
It's on HBO. Do you have HBO?
I have HBO. I do.
Check it out. It's a great show. You'd really like it. It plays on this really cool concept with AI, like at this point where it's just like so far advanced, where it is actually an organic thing. And so it's like this self-generating ultra organic AI. I don't know. It's interesting. It's like, I'm curious because it's like going on, life starts when inorganic materials, are broken down and like these different molecules and particles stack up on each other, blah, 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 which produce these right enough environments for life to begin. And then it's like, okay, we're all the way down and humans are doing this. And now we're creating these inorganic materials, this AI, and well, now it's becoming sentient. So then is it alive? But then is it inorganically alive, And I mean, I guess really what it comes down to is like, does being alive only constitute to something which lives? Is living? I don't know. Is organic? Well, sorry, yeah. That's what that should mean.
So that gets into a whole debate on just, I don't know, the nature of consciousness. Like if AI is at the point where it is truly, I mean.
But consciousness and life are intrinsically intertwined.
So far.
Right?
You know what I mean? Like that's the only thing we've been able to observe to be conscious. But consciousness and life are not necessarily completely intertwined because there is life, or there seems to be life without consciousness. That's also somewhat debatable because of research on plant life having communication.
On Charlie McClung.
On Charlie McClung. Is he conscious? Probably not. He's probably literally just asleep right now, would be my guess. Very much unconscious. Yeah, I don't know. That's a deep question of like, what is the nature of consciousness? And where does it start and where does it end? Like we as humans, we have the mirror test and sort of a recognition
Recognition.
Recognition.
Yeah,
I'm
nice.
starting a revolution. I'm gonna go form my own recognition. We're just gonna wreck shit up. It reminds me of a Pete Holmes joke. Sometimes you he would go on stage and say, some of you might recognize me from stuff I've done in the past. Some of you might be cognizing me for the first time.
It's a good one.
It's a terrible joke, but it's also a great joke.
Yeah. It's a dad joke.
Yeah, like we have the mirror test to see, self-recognition,
self-awareness. Yeah.
And like that's our term. So like I think it's us, dolphins, chimpanzees, I think some of the greater apes, like not greater apes, some of the mediocre apes, but some of the great apes like orangutans and gorillas. I think there's a couple other animals, maybe crow even, that pass the mirror test, quote unquote, where they're able to see themselves in a mirror and recognize that that's just not another dog, or that's just not another cat. That's actually
like when cats get all pissed off at themselves in the mirror.
So funny when they scare themselves and they walk in the room and then they finally look over and like, yeah! All the hair stands up and they fucking get all big and scritchety scratchety. It's my cat impression. I'm working on it, dude. But yeah, like that's just happens to be what our definition of, I guess, what consciousness or self-awareness is. But I mean, we only know what we know, and we can only observe what we've observed. We still don't have a fully conscious AI that's actually like practical and usable. But once that gets here, we're gonna have that philosophical debate on whether or not this is a life, or whether it's not. Not to get into the abortion debate that's going on in the country, but we got to determine what a life is a life. That's very fucking tongue-in-cheek right there. I don't know if that's going in. I don't know if I want to bring abortion into this, but
I mean, we can just say,
it is kind of a good metaphor of like us determining where consciousness, or when quote unquote sentient life begins as it comes to AI. Like we need to have that conversation and figure out like when is an AI, like in 2001 A Space Odyssey. What's the computer's name? Daisy, somebody dum dum bum.
Hal.
Yeah, so in theory, if Hal was a real thing and is clearly sentient and conscious in some way, when do we draw the line of, is this an actual life that has experiences and has memories? I don't know. Like, is Siri alive?
And it's interesting because like you could I mean I guess you can wipe the memory of a human too, because I was going to say you can wipe the memory of AI, but
yeah, the Nazis figured that out in the 1940s for sure.
Yeah. So never mind.
I don't know. There might be a point in the future where maybe erasing an AI's memory or unplugging them could be a homicidal act. Like that could be a thing, like killing an artificial intelligence, but which is I don't know, it could be defined under the law at some point that is a living thing and a living being that has consciousness, that has awareness. Yeah, that's gonna be a freaky world, and it's coming sooner than we think. Like I bet you within 10 years, there's going to be like a fully functional, like you see the robots that are coming out of Japan. You see some of the, just even like the ability of Teslas to constantly be learning about all the streets and all the signs and making more informed decisions. And then cut to Isaac Asimov's fucking robot series. We have a fucking tyrannical fucking robot overlord taking over the fucking planet and getting rid of all the humans, or we're gonna end up in the fucking Matrix where they're using us as batteries. There's only two ways that this fucking ends. We're fucked. I don't see
What
any
was
other way.
was there like a dominant species on the planet before like the rise of Homo sapiens?
What, like dinosaurs?
Oh no, like we give birth to AI, which is like the birth of our inevitable demise, or like our fall from the top. And I was just curious if like, because right, there was a bunch of other different hominids still like walking around, like Neanderthals, uh Denisovans, Cro-Magnon. I don't know how long Homo erectus was walking around, like all that shit.
I think
Um,
like 200 to 250,000 years is the estimate
mhm. But
for
that's a
Homo
little
sapiens.
different, right? Because that's like none of that was giving birth. That was just these just species that I'm sure were like competing for space and resources and things like that. And obviously, a clear winner came out. And I don't think it was necessarily like warfare, but it was, I mean, I'm sure there was things like that, but it's also just circumstantial and things like that, adaptability, and
Yeah,
luck.
there were definitely earlier Homo, or I think the general category is like Homo erectus. There are definitely other species of humanoids, like upright
They
bipedal
think,
walking great
yeah,
apes.
I'm pretty sure that the discovery of fire was attributed to Homo erectus.
Yeah,
Like it was a like it would like was discovered before Homo sapien. It's like I don't know. That kind of just blew me away.
yeah. I think we all come from um, like the original fossil that they found. I think is called Lucy, I believe.
Hmm.
Um, Lucy.
Lucy's Australopithecus.
Yeah.
She's way back.
Well, but I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's like our initial common ancestor. Like that's our sort of like
yeah, yeah.
quote unquote
Of
like
all these
the
branches.
yeah, exactly. And then
Yeah,
everything sort
yeah.
of branched off. Uh did you hear about recently they found, so did you ever hear about Homo
Um,
florencinus,
I have, but
the
I'm
Hobbit people of
yes. Okay,
Indonesia?
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Supposedly there's more evidence coming out that they might still be around.
Like still in the rainforest.
Yeah, so they might not have died off, which lends credit to the Bigfoot theory that there might still be Australopithecus running around the Pacific Northwest and just has been
It's a
hiding.
mite that it's a mite that helps a mite.
You know what?
How hard is the evidence for these little hobbit folk?
I just heard a little thing about it on another podcast. So I don't know the full details. But supposedly they found a skeleton that was not fossilized. That was like freshly dead, probably from like the 70s or the 80s or something like that, somewhere in that range. Um, let's see if I can look this up. Which, like, I mean, biologists are. I just listened to a podcast with a guy named Forrest Gallant. He has a show on like the Animal Planet, but like he's a genuine like biologist that goes out and like tries to find new species that have been thought to be extinct, and he's
Mhm.
found um I can't remember what it's called, but like a tiger striped dog in the Malaysian peninsula or in the Indonesian islands or somewhere like that, or Papua New Guinea. that have been thought to have been extinct for, hundreds of years. So it's not uncommon that biologists, like, we're constantly finding new species or species that were thought to be extinct, but we're just in really remote areas that are hard to get to. And then the Indonesian island chain is one of the most remote places. Like, there's thousands of islands that are completely unpopulated by people.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as we know. So it'd be fucking fascinating if there was this Homo floresiensis, whatever, this like hobbit people that, branched off from our evolutionary tree hundreds of thousands of years ago that are still alive and thriving in this small population. It'd be fascinating. It's like the opposite of Bigfoot. It's Littlefoot.
What is Homo sapiens sapien? About 200,000 years?
I think the estimate is anywhere from like 150, 170,000 years to like 250,000 years. Is like the oldest known fully anatomical, modern human. And that's a long time to be kicking around. Like, it's hard to wrap your mind around how long 250,000 years is, but that's a long time for us to be kicking around. And, a bunch of people in our current population of quote unquote Homo sapiens today have Neanderthal DNA and Denisovan. Denisovan. They also there's a huge, South America is filled with Denisovan DNA. So is the Australian Aborigines and the Filipino and a lot of south eastern sort of island culture societies. So it's like we're not all one species. We're a conglomerate of slightly different species that all have their same genetic roots. Like, it's the same thing. A dog has the same genetics as a wolf does. You can breed any wolf with any dog. You can breed any human with any other human. So if Neanderthals are still within the human category and Denisovans are still within the human category, which they clearly are, because all these people are still fucking human. That just shows more of, dude, we share 80% of our DNA with dandelions. 80% of our DNA. And 98% with chimps. Like, yeah, of course, everything. If 80% of the genetic material in a dandelion coincides with 80% of our, or I guess that's not, whatever, however the fucking math works. It's been a long time since I took genetics, but we still share the same genetic roots and the same genetic structure of, the DNA code A, T, C, and G. I can't remember what the names are, but I don't know. Just even that's fucking fascinating. And then I don't know. I'm going off on a heavy rant.
Yeah, and to think of, to think of on your model, like if it's 20% of our DNA that makes up the difference of hundreds of millions of years from a dandelion to a human, and the spectrum of like life that, between those two different things is only like accounts for 20% of the genetic makeup. I mean, that just really puts a intense spans on how deep and how long this whole life evolution thing's been going down. Assuming that, DNA is, we're still like copied from like, so like would our first DNA replicas be from like a single celled, like something that also a single celled thing would have? Does a single celled organism have DNA?
Yeah.
Right. So then
that's how it's able to replicate, and the DNA splits.
And if single celled organisms were like some of the first life forms floating around, and obviously we come from that, then that's part of the genetic DNA makeup there as well. So it's like the makeup from like that moment all the way up to us and dandelions.
It truly is the perfect sort of encapsulation of the idea of the butterfly effect. At one point, this one strand of DNA was formed in a chemical exchange or a chemical reaction that happened to form all the necessary ingredients that lined up perfectly. And then that one DNA just propagated itself throughout the entire world. Or maybe it happened in multiple places at different times. And that's why we see some of the diversity between like vertebrates and non-vertebrates, like especially non-vertebrates, like octopi, octopuses, octopuses. They're the fucking weirdest thing on the fucking planet. Them and like cuttlefish, the way they're able to like they don't seem natural. You know, they seem very alien, and that might be just like, oh, this other group of slightly different DNA formed over here millions, hundreds of millions of years ago, billions of years ago, and happened to I found out that octopuses are related to
that one.
are related to like mollusks, and they all come from like the same sort of genome. And that jellyfish and anemones and coral all come from the same genome. And they're both very unique adaptations to their environmental pressures. It could be the case that DNA happened to form under slightly different circumstances all across the world, and still is similar enough because it's still the same chemical compounds, but was just slightly different enough that it created this whole different sort of branch off of like the tree of life, which would be fucking really interesting. And then maybe life on vertebrate some mammalian creatures came from fucking transpermia. And so
you never know. Explain the platypus. Transpermia.
Dude, fucking platypuses.
Yeah, that one.
Platypuses. I went on a hard dive on these guys, like fucking, like literally and metaphorically. Like I dove with platypuses. Sorry.
You swam with the platypuses.
I swam with the platypuses, and the platypi took me as one of their own. Yeah, they're mammals that have beaks that also produce a venom, which no other mammal produces venom. They lay eggs, which no other fucking creature, no other mammal on the planet lays eggs.
Yeah.
Platypuses and also just kangaroos and marsupials. You want to know some facts about kangaroos?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, yeah. I got something to fucking tell you right here.
Dude, let me tell you.
Let me tell you.
Let me tell you.
Dude, I gotta fucking tell you. I have something to tell you. Let me fucking tell you something.
Let me tell you. Kangaroos have 3 vaginas, or 3 pussies. Sorry, I keep fucking those up.
What?
Kangaroos have 3 vaginas. The male kangaroo has a 2-pronged penis.
What?
Ridiculous. Google all of this. Trust me, I went on a fucking dive. When kangaroos give birth, they technically give vaginal birth, but they're like tiny little, like almost larva-sized fetuses. And then they follow a trail of spit up to the mother's pouch, where they then gestate in the mother's pouch, which is also where the like udders or nipples are of the kangaroo. Also, kangaroos don't have like, the cartoons. I always thought growing up as a kid that kangaroos had just like a pouch that was just like a pocket. It's a weird alien shaped void that it's just like a skin, like it looks like you're crawling into the upside down, and then there's just udders hanging out inside of there.
Yeah. Kangaroos, it's like a incubator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating to me that these like larva-like fetuses are able to just crawl from one of the three vaginas, following a trail of spit up into the pouch, and then they live there for 8 months. Kangaroos, platypussies,
Wild.
platypi,
Platypussies.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're right. That one. I feel like the marsupials are one of those like evolutionary links between animals having to lay eggs and giving birth the way mammals do.
Yeah. Well, but they got cut off from the central, like,
Yeah, exactly. They were isolated for what, millions of years?
I don't think millions of years. I think it was like 1.6, 1.2 million years ago that Australia fully got cut off. But that's also the mainstream scientists telling us that information, and we don't actually know. And the work of Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson have shown that as little as 12,000 years ago, the Indonesian plateau was well above the surface, and the mainstream media is lying to you. And I lost my train of thought. I need more whiskey.
It said anywhere between 55 to 10 million years ago.
Oh, all right. My facts were wrong. Google is right and my facts are wrong. Fake news.
Fake news.
And the No Fun Zone
You've never been more
podcast
like
is coming
Alex
out here.
before.
They are spreading fake news about Australia, and that's not okay, people. Australia is a wonderful country. None of them are bogans. Okay.
Bogans?
You don't know that term?
What's a bogan?
It's the Australian sort of term for like hick or hillbilly. Just
Oh,
like
okay.
a country boy. A redneck.
A bogan. It's not bad.
So if Jeff Foxworthy were in Australia, it would go a little something like this. Yeah, mate. If you strap 2 dingoes to the back of your truck, you might be a fucking bogan. Joke didn't land whatsoever. We're going to go ahead and edit that out.
Sorry, I got a little distracted. I thought it was good.
No, it
I'm
wasn't.
glad you went for it.
Hey, man, I'm always going to swing, but I don't need somebody to tell me if I hit a home run. I know if I fouled that shit off.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely fouled that shit off.
Yeah, I think that was a strike.
Yeah, I didn't, dude. No, that should have been a ball, but I swung at it anyway. So that I would have gotten walked to first base. I would have fucking walked in the fucking run on third, but I swung on it anyway, and I'm out. So guess what? Now at this point, we're gonna leave it in because everyone needs to know. Sometimes you swing, sometimes you don't hit.
This is true.
Just like the platypussies.
Just like the platypussy.
Do you know about Australia brought in feral cats to help deal with their rodent problem?
Of course they did.
And it went absolutely haywire. And now there are 50 million fucking feral cats running around Australia, killing everything in sight.
Tight.
And so now hunters in Australia can get tags and get paid by the government, I believe, to hunt feral house cats.
Yeah, sounds about right.
It sounds exactly right. Rompin' stompin' Homo sapiens. Just fucking every time we bring anything anywhere, it ruins it. Hawaii has a huge problem with wild boar and with chickens because they don't belong in this environment. There's no natural predators. And the same thing with Australia. Like, what in Australia is going to catch 50 million house cats? None of them. And now they're fucked. The problem is evolution relies on this idea of like this homeostasis, and just everything plays its part and everything kind of fits in. And like we were saying before, humans have kind of removed themselves. We've removed ourselves from the evolutionary cycle, but we've also interfered with the evolutionary cycle of everything else on the planet. So we've taken ourselves out of the pool of evolution and being able to sort of, grow as a species. But then at the same time, we're also fucking over every other species on the planet. Completely unknowingly. And fuck. It's like remember in The Office when Dwight said, there's too many humans on this planet. We need a new plague. We kind of do. There's too many people doing too many fucked up things. Bill Burr had a great bit on this.
I mean, I understand that, like, the joke is like, obviously ridiculous, but it's also, speaking to the state of the planet, it's like we do need to find an equilibrium, right? And so
what do we pay like wildlife protection agencies for? Like the game wardens and the fishing wardens to manage populations. If the deer population gets too out of control, more hunting tags are getting put out there because there's too many fucking deer. What are we going to do with all these fucking deer? There's deer everywhere. We need to shoot some of these deer.
Well, but in our society, we've deemed human life the most important life, right? So it's like, and obviously, it's just fucked up because, it's just fucked up to think of, essentially that's what like fucking Hitler was doing. He's like, oh, well, we're cleansing, right?
Well, he was cleansing specific groups of people. I'm saying.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, I feel like it would always fall into a category of marginalization.
Yeah, no, it definitely would. And folks, that's what the New World Order is planning on this very event. They're trying to the globalists want to decrease the population across the planet, and they want to get rid of about 60, maybe 80% of us. Only the elite are going to survive. There's a compound underneath DIA Airport in Colorado. There's a whole compound, and they're going to get rid of all of us. COVID was just to test people. They're gonna get rid of us, and the alien invasion is a false flag operation, and the people.